The Republican effort to ban certain types of literature has predictably backfired, as books deemed too explicit are actually getting a spike in readership. Now, a new study by professors at Carnegie Mellon University and George Mason University found that banned books, these are books banned by right-wing groups, specifically so-called right-wing parents groups that have been attacking LGBTQ plus books, as well as books on race, calling it critical race theory, have actually seen a 12% increase in circulation at libraries that did not have these restrictions. Now, again, a lot of states have passed restrictions, unfortunately, on these types of books, not because they're too explicit. Again, they claim it's because it is, but because of certain themes that they just don't like. Now, Lisa Varga, executive director of the Virginia Library Association, told a local news outlet WJLA that these results are actually pretty unsurprising. You know, quote, "I think the data shows those books generally have a larger interest now." The Streisand effect. Varga said, "I think we'll see people who want to read will always read. This may spark some interest in readers who maybe haven't picked up a book in a long time." Now, the study also found that the increased readership of banned books was largely boosted by previously lesser-known authors, and social media exposure surrounding certain titles up for restriction played a role in increased readership. So if the plan was to bury these books so that nobody reads them, well, that appears to be a failure.
Whoopsie.
Mission accomplished, guys. Well done. Well done. Banning books leads to more books that, more banned books being read. Who would have known? Except, yeah, that's kind of what happens. That said, this is not all good. There's still a lot of bad here because these books are still getting banned. And as Varga points out, she has cautioned that the bans already in place have had some irreversible negative effects. Quote, "When you take the book out of the school, the students there, that might be their only access to books. The parents and guardians might not be taking them to the public library. The students might not have the disposable income to purchase books." Certainly true. And the most important thing is if those books have been banned and removed from school libraries or public libraries, that they are no longer available to the audience which they were intended. That's really devastating to us. So that absolutely is the takeaway here. Yes, it's a bad thing because the people who need these books the most are not getting access to them. Even though there are more people that are reading these banned books, which is good, readership is good, you still have the people that need them the most that are being denied access to them thanks to the right wing. Now, a good example of this is, for example, a teen, LGBTQ teen that's in like the Bible Belt. Who knows they're different from everyone else, right? They may be a boy who's developing feelings for other boys instead of girls. Maybe they're not quite sure what to do. Again, because they're living in an area where there's not a lot of openly gay people. And so these books, which are being banned for having LGBTQ plus content, they help students like that understand what they're going through and understand that they're loved and that they're accepted and that what they're doing is not a bad thing, and that there are other people like that who have these similar experiences. So when you ban books, by the way, you don't take away those feelings. When you ban mentions of LGBTQ people, you don't ban those feelings. You don't ban those people from being who they are. You just make it harder for the person to learn to accept themselves for who and what they are at a very sensitive time in their life. I mean, everybody knows how awkward it is to be a teenager, to not know exactly who and what you are at that point in their life. And that's why they should be available in schools. And again, going through an awkward phase, as a teenager, as I had when I was a teenager myself, I'm thankful that I wasn't LGBTQ, that I knew, my sexuality, my gender identity. I knew all that stuff. But there are people out there, young people who don't, and it's got to take a already confusing time in your life when you're developing and make it even worse. And so that's why they should be available in these public schools and in public libraries, because it helps them understand who they are and feel more accepted. And not only that, but look, getting back to Varga's point, some of these kids may have homophobic or transphobic parents who don't support them in learning about themselves and don't get them any sort of support. And that's why there's an issue with self-harm involving LGBTQ youth. It's of course extremely high. It's actually double that of their heteronormative peers. That's an issue. And it's not because they have this different sexuality or gender identity. No, it's because they don't have support. They don't have people that are on their side. And so they feel othered. They feel marginalized. That they're the outsider, that they're the freak, that they're not normal, and that they're not accepted. And that's what leads to self-harm. And so with the support, though, with someone who supports them and accepts them for who they are, self-harm, the numbers of self-harm and attempted suicides plummet. The Trevor Project's National Survey on LGBTQ youth mental health shows that youth who report having at least one accepting adult were 40% less likely to report a suicide attempt in the past year. That was in 2019. So having accepting adults, of course, is important. Having reading materials like books that show that they're not alone was also very important. And I mean, I can't stress the importance of having just an understanding that, oh my God, there are people like me. There are people like me out there. There are people that understand what I'm going through, and learning about those experiences, again, really do help people. They help them. Now, despite this new study, Varga says that this will not deter the book banners, which of course, she says, I don't think this will stop anyone from trying to get the books out of the hands of the people that don't want them exposed to, or they don't want them exposed to. What we're seeing is a pattern of books that are being banned and challenged that represent the BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus communities, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. Varga then explains why. Generally, what happens is people find out about a book on social media. They might see a clip or a paragraph or a page out of it, and they decide to take that fight to their local community. The majority of folks who are doing this haven't even read the book in its entirety. And that's part of the reason we are so forceful. Because when you look at a book, you have to look at it as a whole. You can't just take things out of context and decide you don't want your child to read it, so therefore, no one else can read it. So, I mean, that right there is, there's so many different good points in that paragraph alone. And it's exactly what they're trying to do. That said, Varga added, I think it's up to each family member to determine what's right for their children, but you don't get to make a decision for other people's kids. What I really hope folks recognize is trying to ban books and doing a line item veto of chapters or anything like that is really such overreach. It's really a misuse of power. Hopefully folks will realize that and do what we hope they do. Make choices for themselves and their families and not try to make decisions for other members of the community. Yeah, I mean, that goes down to personal freedoms, right? Personal liberty. Yeah, you're fine to make to make decisions for yourself and for your family. Sure. You don't want your kid reading that book? Okay, well, don't buy them that book. Okay, that's it. But if you're trying to make decisions for other people in the community, other families, other kids, then no, you don't get to be able to do that. And so I agree with her, but and by the way, I wish people would realize that. I wish that would be the case, but the far right now is currently in the middle of what is essentially a new satanic panic, and is in a rush to ban anything related to LGBTQ community, and as well as, of course, talking about racism. Now, there is a ray of hopium here that I want to share with you, and that's the American people themselves. who are not in favor of this. They're not motivated by book bans. They don't like book bans. A 2022 study found that 90% of Democrats, 53% of Republicans, and 80% of independent voters actually oppose book bans. And an overwhelming 90% of participants opposed banning classic literature and children's books. And there it is. The majority of the American people not really interested in your book bans. So, maybe you might want to focus on something else. Like maybe doing something useful for a change. Oh, what am I kidding? The far right, they'll never do anything useful.